Liverpool lose this one in Turkey. Here is a look at the match stats, and we're going to talk all about it right now as we welcome in another member of our team. It is the ever dapper Stuart Robson. But Stevie, you know I'm going to have to come straight to you. What went wrong for Liverpool today?
Well, you know, it's that famous saying, deja vu all over again? Because this is exactly what it was. We've seen this video pretty much since the start of the season. A team that has plenty of possession, but going forward has plenty of players forward, but there's no cohesion. There's no fluidity in it. There's no real open chances created either. I mean, considering you look at the stats with the amount of shots, with the amount of possession, you know, the Galatasaray keeper wasn't put under that much pressure. And then again, when they cough the ball up, as they've been doing, there seems to be a big hole in the middle of the park that stops anybody and everybody getting at the back line. And again, you saw today, Konate being the culprit once again, but everybody else around them, including Van Dijk, just doesn't look comfortable when teams are going at them. So, yeah, we've seen it before, and Arne Slot is going to have to figure this one out because it's the same old game after game.
We were all doing the Community Shield. I was in London and you guys were here, Stevie, in the studio. And it was very early, obviously, and it was a Community Shield, but it was a bit of an occasion. Obviously, Wembley, the curtain raiser to the start of the English season against a very well-organised Palace side who kind of did what Palace do well. They sat back and they waited, and then they looked for those gaps and they hit those holes and they hit those balls over the top, and they really caused Liverpool problems. And we talked about the positioning of the fullbacks, the new fullbacks, to the tried and trusted centre-backs. You know, Konate with Frimpong, Kerkez with Van Dijk, and the gaps were kind of worrying in that game, and you thought, OK, they're going to have to go away. This is really the area they're going to have to work in the most. I know they've signed Florian Wirtz and the midfield has changed in terms of the balance. But when you change both your fullbacks, you really then have to go work on your back four as a unit. And to be, where are we now, a couple of months into the season, and if anything, they've probably got worse defensively. This is a huge concern. The other concern I would have is, apart from the defending, the coughing the ball up, the playing in the wrong areas, all those sort of things that they're doing, the Florian Wirtz situation, which is ongoing. I know he's very early and he's a great player, but it seems that Arne Slot is square pegging into round holes here to try and figure things out. You signed Frimpong, you got Bradley, but more than one occasion you've played Szoboszlai at right back. He's one of the best midfielders, all-round midfielders in European football. So, just because you've signed some players, why are you weakening the team in one position to effectively weaken it in another? Even though he's done a decent job at right back in a couple of games that he's played there, that's a worry for me. That he's already at that stage of putting those pegs in the wrong holes to try and, you know, he might say it was to give somebody a rest, but it was trying to maybe to do, you know, because if Szoboszlai plays, Gravenberch plays, and it was Jones today, but it was usually McAllister. If those three players play, then Florian Wirtz either doesn't play or he's got to move position. Yeah. And if Florian Wirtz plays in the 10 role, then somebody's got to move position or miss out. And that's to the detriment, I think, of the team and the continuity of the team going forward, which is what they were brilliant at for the first 6 months last year. Consistency and continuity.
Yeah, Robbo, as the boys were saying, coughing the ball up, playing players out of place, it seems like it's getting a lot for Arne Slot to address.
Well, there was two things that were wrong defensively. First of all, you know, you can accept one if you're playing out from the back and you give the ball away and you're caught on the counter-attack and you say, OK, we've got to improve on that. But the two shot, the penalty and the chance that they had very early on when he gets in behind the right-back Szoboszlai were when they built up from the back. There was no real pressure on the ball. It was too easy to pass it out wide. So there was two issues defensively. You know, it wasn't just coughing the ball up. It was also when they had chance to go and press the ball in midfield and then they had to make decisions at the back, they made the wrong decisions. For the first one, when the left winger gets in, Konate starts to go towards the ball when there's no reason for him to go towards the ball. He's got to drop off and defend the space. And of course, then when you're going forward, they don't look cohesive. There's a lack of understanding about where the movement is. I think they had two chances where they ran in behind. Isak, when he came on, had a shot with his left foot, and there was once Ekitike in the first half, very early on in the game, got a ball from Gakpo and got in behind. When Liverpool are playing at their very best, their front players are making those runs time and time again and getting in. When Mo Salah's coming from the right-hand side, that's not happening at the moment, or it didn't happen enough tonight. Only twice in the whole game against the side that when you look at their midfield, when I saw Gundogan in midfield and Torreira, players that we'd seen a lot in the Premier League or for Barcelona in the case of Gundogan, they can't run anymore. They can't get around the field, but they were still more energetic than Liverpool's midfield. That's a worry.
The players are not helping Arne Slot either. I can't disagree with Craig talking about trying to put square pegs in round holes, but the players are not actually helping the manager because there is nobody on that team who's actually producing what they're capable of. Maybe the closest one is Slobozlai, and it's making it difficult for Slot. Bradley's not done well when he's played at right back. Frimpong struggled at right back. You've ended up with Slobozlai at right back. Kerkez has had a shocker since he's come in, quite honestly. He's been bang average. Kanate has been really, really... he just looks devoid of any confidence. I can go through the whole team and talk about how they are not at their best. So, not only does Arne Slot have to figure out the best 11 that plays the best together, but he's got to figure out who he can rely on, because right now, he can't, other than Alisson, who got injured tonight, him and Szoboszlai are the only two in that 11 so far this season. Probably throw Ekitike in. So that's 3 out of 11 that you can rely on. You don't win anything. Certainly you don't win the Champions League or the Premier League when you've got 3 producing and 8 you're not sure what you're getting.
Robbo's talking about cohesion going forward. You think about this. Andy Robertson last year wasn't, in the last year or two, wasn't the Andy Robertson of old, right? But it was still a sort of hybrid version where he still would get forward. Maybe not with the same aggression, the same speed, the same amount of times during the game, but he'd still get forward. He'd still be an outlet when Gakpo came inside, down that left-hand side to whip balls in. They're not getting that from Kerkez because, as Stevie said, he's struggling. He's just struggling defensively and going forward. And then on the other side, people talked about Alexander-Arnold's defending, but what you've lost on the other side is arguably the greatest range of passing that they had in their team. Balls over the top, balls in behind, dropping into midfield was what he used to do, and playing passes from there. That's gone. And to add a third string to the bow, Luis Diaz, who's gone to Bayern Munich, was one of the better ball carriers they had in their team. He could take it in, he could take it for a run, he could stretch the defence, and he could put the defence on the back foot. Don't have that either. So there's quite a few facets of the team that have changed in terms of how they approach it. No passing, they haven't got the same passing ability at right back. They haven't got a player at the moment in Kerkez who's given them basically a second left winger. And obviously, there was the Diego Jota tragedy in the summer. A player that always made a big difference whether starting or coming off the bench. And then Luis Diaz, who wanted to go to Bayern Munich, but as I think we'll all agree, was a player that could really take the ball for a run and alleviate some pressure. They've got Ekitike, they've got Alexander Isak, but they haven't got these players, and they've also got a Mo Salah who started this season, by his standards, very poorly.
Well, Robbo, an interesting quote from Arne Slot is where he was saying that this Liverpool right now is not so far off from the level that we saw from Liverpool last season that, of course, won them the Premier League. Stevie doesn't like that. He just said it after this game today, Robbo, but you're not buying that, are you?
Absolutely not. No, they look a far worse side. I know at the beginning of the season we said they're not playing particularly well, but they're getting results. So when they start to perform, it's great news for them. But we also said that the way they're playing, they're going to start losing games, and how they're going to pick it up again. They've now lost a couple of games, played very poorly against Crystal Palace, played poorly again tonight. How are they going to get themselves back on track? There's a lot of work now for Arne Slot to do, and for the players as well. Players have got to build their confidence up. Wirtz has got to do something magical in a game to win over the fans and win over everybody that's watching, because at the moment he's not affecting the game enough. Ekitike has got to be better with his back to goal. He's good when he runs in behind people, and Kerkez, as both both the guys said, is having an absolute shocker at left back. He looks as though he can be beaten down one side and can't get forward with any quality when he's going forward. So there's lots of things that are wrong with Liverpool at the moment, and they're nowhere near the team they were at the beginning of last season.
I liken it a little bit to Real Madrid. Real Madrid under Ancelotti had that standout season, Champions League winners and La Liga winners. It was Vinicius Junior and Rodrigo. It was Bellingham having a standout, certainly 6 or 7 months of his first season, scoring goals for fun. And all of a sudden, the dynamic changed with 1 or 2 players leaving and Kylian and Mbappe coming in. And last year we saw the sort of ashes of the Real Madrid debacle, where Ancelotti, who is much more experienced and much more successful manager than Arne Slot, spent the whole season from match day 1 trying to figure it out. Trying to figure out the Vinicius, Mbappe, Rodrigo, Bellingham, how the hell do I make this work? And he couldn't. And he certainly couldn't to the same standard of the season before. Hence, they lost every Clásico and they were unsuccessful last season. And I kind of feel Slot's in the same position. We all sat here and said, what a great summer in terms of recruitment. That's an unbelievable... And yeah, on the face of it, signed good players, individually signed good players. But his big problem, the same as Ancelotti, was how do you get the balance of the team right? And at the moment, he's struggling big time to get that done. I mean, they're playing Chelsea at the weekend on Saturday. And could we sit here and say what we think his team's going to be? I mean, is Bradley going to play? Is Frimpong going to play? Is Wirtz going to play in 10, or is he going to play left, or is he going to bring Szoboszlai back into midfield? Nobody knows.
No idea.
We have no idea at the moment. And last year you could have shut your eyes and picked Arne Slot's team at this stage of the season.
You could probably say that the one thing that's going to happen is they're going to have possession again. I think absolutely they'll have possession again, which they've had in every single game they've played so far this season. But it's what you do with it. And right now, you know, we should never underestimate when you make so many changes, particularly to a side that was so good as a unit. And everything pretty much for 3/4 of the season was smooth. The word cohesive we're talking about, all of these things, they just happened. It just looked natural. It just doesn't look natural. Nobody's doing what they naturally we expected them to do. Not anybody in that side at all. And until they get that back, nothing's going to change.
Well, Robbo, at the weekend, one of our viewers asked us that when Liverpool lost, why is it that we talk about why Liverpool lost and not how Crystal Palace won? And it's Galatasaray that won today. And the reason that they won was that Osimhen penalty that we saw, which was just a nice reminder of how good of a player he is, which begs the question, what on earth is he doing in Turkey and not probably at one of the other bigger teams in Europe that need a striker?
Well, he was obviously brilliant at Napoli. He fell out, or Conte didn't really want him there. He fell out with Conte when he went there. And he's now playing at Galatasaray. There's lots of big clubs that should have taken him, but didn't take the chance on him. But what he showed tonight was a great awareness of where the space was. He kept on pulling out down the side of Van Dijk into the space that Kerkez had left. He was good with his back to goal. He was a constant threat. Yes, he scored a penalty, but he's a top-class player. And he's got energy, he's got pace, he's got a bit of a strength as well, and he's not bad in the air. So he's a centre-forward that, if you look between Isak and him, I still would say Isak's just slightly better, but he won't be far off.
Not far off, Craig. Is that how you saw it too?
Well, I mean, somehow we're going to
bring in United.
Somehow we're going to shoehorn, as discussed, Man United into this show today, even though they haven't played. But I mean, they opted for Benjamin Sesko, which is, you know, a much younger player, but he's also having these issues at the moment. I mean, it's not the easiest team to play in, I'll give you that. But he got a goal at the weekend at Brentford, but he really didn't do a lot else after the goal, if I'm being quite frank. So yeah, it's I think a little frustrating for Osimhen. I think he's just biding his time before he moves back to one of the, you know, I say Europe's big clubs. Galatasaray's a big clubs, but I mean one of the big leagues. But it all boils down to his contract situation and his relationship at Napoli. But he certainly is in the right team, a handful for even the most physical and quick defenders.
Well, Stevie, not to throw salt in your wounds, and obviously we're waiting for the next 24 hours to see the true extent of the injuries to Ekitike and Alisson, but knowing you have Chelsea at the weekend, plus all of the issues that we just spoke about, how big of a blow could their absences be for Liverpool now?
You know, obviously Alisson would be the biggest blow. At the same time, Kamadash-Vili is a great goalkeeper. You know, Liverpool has a squad to cope with injuries.
Oh, we're just hearing that Alisson is definitely confirmed out for Chelsea.
Yeah, but as I said, Kamadash-Vili is a fantastic goalkeeper. He would start on a lot of big teams in Europe. So I'm not that worried about that. I mean, again, Ekitike, that means we've got Isak. So listen, they're not, in terms of personnel, Liverpool's not in a bad place. Liverpool's in a good place. Unfortunately, though, they can't string performances together, and they can't get cohesive. Again, we're using that word, but that's really what the problem is. You know, Liverpool, with so much of the ball, you get the feeling that it's a matter of time before somebody does something. That's how much ability they've got. But in the last couple of games, they haven't been able to do that, which they did the previous 5. So, listen, Liverpool in a good spot personnel-wise. Just as a unit, they're not.
I think Liverpool, Arsenal and Man City in particular are in that scenario where there's not really a lot of tears for these clubs with injuries, because they've beefed up the squad so well in the summer and spent a lot of money. And, you know, we've seen it with Arsenal early in the season, with Saka been out and with Odegaard been out. And they've signed players like Eze and Madueke and others to come in and do a job. They've got 2 world-class strikers in Isak and Ekitike. They got players to come in and do a job. Their big problem is not injuries; it's the basics at the moment. I mean, Stevie talked about them, you know, in terms of the look, and they're just not doing the things that they were doing last year. Well, they look nervous. They actually look nervous on the ball, and just as if they're ready to make a mistake. They know they're going to make a mistake, and they know teams are going to exploit the gaps that they're showing. And I think if they don't figure that out by the weekend, and Chelsea have their own issues, obviously they're not in the greatest form, and they can't keep 11 men on the field, which is a problem for them. But going forward, Chelsea can be pretty good, and if Liverpool are as shoddy defensively, it could be a tough day for them.